Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Rabbi Says here at the Moral Edge Studios.
All right, this time I'm not going to interrupt too much. Last time we did a crazy intro.
Remember the last episode? That's what I had to put up with.
It was fun. All right, continue.
Okay, well today we have some hot topics, if I don't say so myself. We got hot topics.
Let's hear.
We're going to talk about intimacy. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about idolatry.
Ooh.
We're going to talk about intoxication.
Ooh.
Yeah, three hot topics.
We're going to end on a high note.
On a very high, on a spirits, with spirits.
Okay.
Did I say that right? With spirits, on a spiritual note. Spiritual note. So we're going to begin with intimacy in Judaism, and boy, is that a loose cannon. There's a lot to talk about in the world of intimacy in Judaism because intimacy, family, marriage is a fundamental component of Judaism. It's a foundation of everything we have. You know, Judaism teaches that holiness is not achieved by running away from the physical world. Judaism teaches that holiness is acquired by engaging in the physical world and elevating the physical world, the physical pleasures.
So we're not monks. We don't go up to a mountaintop and hide away from the women. That's not a Jewish idea.
It's in fact the opposite of what Judaism teaches. We're against such behavior, such ideas in order to become holy, run away from the world, go hide on a mountain. No. We believe that eating becomes holy when you make blessings, when you have guests around your table, when you keep the kosher laws. We believe that work becomes holy and sanctified and elevated when you work honestly, sincerely. And physical intimacy is holy when done in the right context, and that's marriage. The Hebrew word Kiddusha, holiness, doesn't merely mean withdrawal from life. It means living life with purpose and sanctity. That's Kiddusha, that's holiness in Judaism, living life in order to sanctify the mundane, the material, everything around us. So marriage exemplifies this ideal. Husband and wife unite. They unite in love, respect, commitment. They don't merely create a household in marriage. You create a sanctuary for God's presence in marriage. So where does it all come from? Where does it begin? So the Torah is the first place to look. And the first verses of the Torah, in fact, it is not good for man to be alone. Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. And this statement is remarkable on several levels. Lo tov yichya adam levado. It's not good for a man to be alone. And for one, it's the first time in the entire Torah we find something that's not good. The first not good of the Torah, the first don't, the first avoid is to live alone.
Well, I've been alone for the last 2 weeks. My wife left me. She's in the States.
Yeah.
So I'm experiencing that.
You're experiencing
it has its moments.
Yeah. It has ups and downs.
It has its good points and bad points.
Hopefully the separation will just lead to a more exciting reunion
looking forward.
When you get back together, when your wife comes back to Israel. So that's the first verse, the first source for marriage. It's not good for a man to be alone. And like I mentioned, it's the first time the Torah tells us this is not good. The second verse of relevance is in Genesis also, chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and they will become one flesh. Husband and wife cling together. They become united emotionally, spiritually, physically. The one flesh is not merely the physical union, but the one flesh is the family they build together on Torah values. And the relationship between Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, teaches another important lesson. Before Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden, the Torah tells us they were both naked, but they were not ashamed. Genesis chapter 2, verse 25. And the commentators, the sages tell us that the original intention for God was that we would live without embarrassment, without exploitation, without selfishness. The physical world, the intimate world, the personal world would be just like everything else. Modesty only became necessary when Adam and Eve misused the physical pleasure. And once that was misused, everything became under scrutiny and, further measures were needed. It was not possible to walk around naked anymore as they did in the Garden of Eden before the sin. So after we see that mankind couldn't handle the first physical material regulation, the first rule, which by the way was a kosher rule. The first rule given to all mankind was a kosher rule. Don't eat this. Eat anything you want, but not this. It gives you an idea how important keeping kosher is. It's literally the first commandment that God gave mankind. But once mankind blew it and couldn't keep that one physical pleasure as instructed. So all the physical pleasures became more regulated and clothing became the norm, and intimacy was only done in private behind closed doors.
Interesting. So it's all the snake's fault, huh?
If some say it's a snake,
well, Adam
blames it on Eve,
right.
and then they blame it on Adam. Everyone throws the blame around, in that story.
I don't think anything's changed.
Everyone throwing around the blame. The prophets talk about marriage being a covenant, not a commitment, a covenant. What's the difference between a commitment and a covenant? A commitment you can usually back out of. You sign a contract, you back out of it. You go to court, you come to an agreement, you back out of it. A covenant you never back out of, just like God's covenant with the Jewish people. God made a covenant with the Jewish people when everything was perfect. Abraham, Mount Sinai, when things were really perfect. But the Jews strayed and sinned. God never gave up on the Jewish people. He always kept us. He kept loyal to us even when we were not loyal to him. That's marriage. Not everything is going to be hunky-dory in marriage. We have to understand that. But when you're under that chuppah and you make a commitment to another person, it's not a commitment. It's a covenant. It's ups and downs. We do have divorce, but divorce is the last resort. We had a class.
We spoke about that.
We had an episode on divorce, but that's the Jewish concept of marriage. It's a covenant, not a commitment.
What is the man's obligation in terms of intimacy? Is it the man obligated to satisfy his wife, the wife with the man? How does that, who runs the show?
Okay, we're going into the new territory on this topic now, Michael. And we're going to go to what's called the mitzvah of Ona. What you just referred to, the requirement to be intimate together, a man's responsibility to be intimate with his wife, is called Ona. And that comes from Exodus chapter 21, verse 10. And it tells us that a husband must take care of a woman's food needs, clothing needs, and marital needs. That's the word Ona is the marital relations. And the Talmud identifies how often a man must be intimate with his wife. And Talmud tells us it depends how...
On his business, right?
On his business.
Yeah. How it's also based on this thing with animals, like camels work so hard, they get more of a break. It's in the animal world also.
Yeah, there's a famous teaching with Rashi and Lavan and Yaakov and the gifts of the animals. We won't get into that right now, but yes, it is mirrored to some extent on animal life, to some extent. But let's go away from that right now and focus on the practical aspects of the Ona mitzvah. But it is true that it depends how frequently the husband is found at home. A husband who travels is exempt for the mitzvah of Ona, whereas where he's home, he's more obligated in the mitzvah of Ona. And in Ona, it's not just the physical, but Ona also includes emotional attachment, honoring our wife, being sensitive to our wives, listening to them when they have to talk. And this is one of the defining principles of an ethical Jewish marriage. Just like we put away time and efforts and resources to ensure that our family is fed, our wife is fed, our wives are clothed, we have to ensure that our wives' physical needs are met and taken care of as well.
So it's a responsibility on the man, not on the woman.
It's a responsibility on the man to ensure that his wife is satisfied, but a woman should also be a partner when the husband feels that he needs intimacy.
But technically, it's a commandment for the man.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, having children is also a commandment on the man.
Right.
It's not a mitzvah for a woman to have a child, but they get a mitzvah for participating in the midst of having children. So similar idea on the whole, before you have children, you have to be intimate. So in the intimacy, we also see a mirror idea of this as well. So that's the mitzvah of Ona, and Ona turns into the world of Taharat HaMishpacha, the laws of family purity. Now, this is very extensive. I mean, the Jewish marital relationship is very, very regulated, mostly in a good way. I mean, obviously, there's some times that you're forced to separate. The Jewish law, the halacha, requires it to separate. But both when we're separate and both when we're together, we have a lot of rules in Judaism in this area of life. For example, I mean, once a woman gets her period, she sees blood. So obviously, they're forbidden to each other during the bleeding. But not only that, they're forbidden to touch in any way, shape, or form, barring medical emergencies. Husband and wife should not even pass the keys to the car between one another during the Niddah.
This is really a whole class or a whole series of classes.
Yeah, could be.
Before people get married, they go to 5, 6, 7, 10 sessions with the rabbi just to learn all the details of this.
That's what I do.
So this is
another one
not
of my
something
things.
we're going to cover, but just generalities.
Brief. So a woman gets her period. All physical contact is forbidden. If I need to, pass my wife a drink, a cup, I cannot pass it to her hand. I've got to put it down and then she'll pick it up. Okay, these are the laws of Niddah. So we have three terms that viewers could get acquainted with. We spoke about Ona, which is the umbrella of the requirement to be intimate. We spoke about Tarat HaMishpacha, which is the umbrella of the family laws. And now we have the Niddah laws when a woman is menstruating, when she's called impure. We have these laws I'm talking about right now.
There's the basic law is not to have relations, but all these extra laws are rabbinic in nature. So in terms of...
For the most part, they're rabbinic. The Rambam, interestingly, says almost any physical connection could be a biblical violation. But for the most part, you're right. The real biblical violation is having marital relations when a woman is in the Niddah state. As the Torah itself says 2 or 3 times, you may not approach a woman at the time of her period.
Or touching in an intimate way, would that also be from the Torah, or is that rabbinic?
So that's an example where
not
Maimonides...
just holding hands
touching,
or something.
holding hands. So Maimonides, for example, would say that is a biblical violation. I believe most others would say it's a rabbinic violation. But as Orthodox Jews, whether it's rabbinically forbidden or biblically forbidden, we treat it the same and we don't do it.
Now, what's interesting is that if you're not allowed to touch another woman, certainly who's somebody else's wife or even a single woman, but the laws of a wife who's impure is more strict than the laws of someone who's not your wife who's impure.
That's right. That's correct, Michael. And the reason for that is because we're so used to being intimate with our wives, we're concerned that if we're not extra careful, we might violate the biblical prohibition and be intimate. Whereas a strange wife, a strange woman, someone we don't know, we're not used to being intimate with them, and there's less concern that something inappropriate would happen. So I'll give you an example of what you said. Although it's a controversial example I'm going to give you, it's a good example for our purposes over here. Shaking the hand of a woman you're not married to is less bad than shaking your wife's hand when she's a Niddah, when she's having her period.
Right. It's counterintuitive, but it does make sense.
Yeah, because we're so used to being intimate with our wives, we're worried that one handshake will lead to something else. With a stranger, a business meeting, we're not worried about anything happening from a handshake. Now, to continue the process of the Niddah, I mentioned that a woman gets her period. That usually lasts 4, 5, maybe 6 days. And after the bleeding stops, a woman is still not permitted to return to her husband. She has to wait another week, counting 7 days. And after the 7 days, the wife immerses in the ritual bath, the Mikvah.
7 clean days. If there's a stain or some unclean day that negates the...
You're getting technical over here. I wasn't ready to go so deep.
Sorry.
We talk about badikas twice a day. Now, I wasn't ready to go so deep. No, sure, you're correct, Michael. I'm having fun on the side over here. You'll play with whatever you have to play with. Yeah, I want to talk about badikas twice a day. So after the bleeding has ceased, a woman counts another 7 days of being without blood. And then on the 7th day, at the end of the 7th day, she immerses in the ritual bath in the mikvah. And only then can touching relations resume between husband and wife. So we're talking about a 11 to 13-day period every month where husband and wife are forbidden to be in contact with each other.
Now that night, after she goes to the mikvah, becomes pure, that there's a different level of responsibility and requirement to be intimate that very night as opposed to other nights. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
The night that a woman immerses in a mikvah, for whatever reason she had to immerse in a mikvah, whether it was after a period or other situations we have in Jewish life that might require a mikvah, the requirement to be intimate on that night, no matter what the husband's profession is, and a husband should time his business travels to make sure he's home when his wife is expected to go to the mikvah. Yeah, and so too, when a man has to travel, he has to ensure that it works with his wife's schedule, period schedule, if possible. He should make an effort to ensure that they don't lose days together. So if a husband has to go away for 10 days, try to time it. It's those 10 days when the woman is impure anyways.
Now, what about, this is an interesting thing, when getting married, right? There's a thing about a chuppahs niddah, like when you're getting married, obviously the first night you're together, but it has to also work with the lady's, schedule. So when you're planning a wedding, you have to really plan it out, figure out, right? I mean,
That's
you
right.
tell me.
Yeah. A Jewish wedding cannot just be an arbitrary date. After engagement is announced with an Orthodox couple, you got to get out the calendar and do some math to make sure that the wedding date falls 5 days after the bleeding begins and another 7 days of clean, and then go to the mikvah and ensure to schedule the wedding before the next period is expected.
Right, but what if it's 6 months down the road, or in many Orthodox weddings, it's 3 months, but it could be a year. It could be. What would happen if it turns out you made a wrong calculation? And
Okay.
now, so how does that work?
Very good question. I've dealt with that firsthand several times. First of all, I encourage the couple, don't worry. It's okay. Even though you're in need of your chuppah, don't worry. You have many, many years of marital bliss ahead of you. It's a bummer. But we'll get over it. Now, the requirements, first of all, let me back up, that when we see that the math isn't working out and the wedding date's approaching and it might fall out during the Niddah period, there's pills. Oh. And I would say far more than half of Orthodox brides nowadays are on a pill to regulate their period to ensure they're pure on their wedding night. So for the most part, it's a non-issue because of the pills. But it does happen that a pill was missed and a miscalculation, this and that. So the husband and wife are not allowed to be alone together until the purification procedure has met, the bleeding has stopped, 7 days counted, and then immersion in Mikvah. So it's a bit of a bummer, as I mentioned, but they can't be alone.
How does that play out? I mean, where do they stay? They have
by mommy and daddy. Oh. There's a few solutions to this, but one of the solutions is that husband or wife sleep in a home with other people, and that's, is a deterrent.
Rooms?
So some do separate rooms, some do the same room in separate beds, with the door open, with the door closed, but maybe someone will pop in every few hours, surprise, to be a deterrent, so nothing forbidden would take place. But it is a serious issue, and it's part of Jewish life, and it's happened. Men come to me frequently that this thing or that thing has caused husband and wife to be separate for 3-4 months. Staining issues, mid-cycle bleeding in the period, and if I can use the word again, it's a bummer. It's not ideal, it's not exciting, but we get over it. We're Jews, we know how to handle it, we talk about it, and we work through it together, and hopefully, marital bliss is on its way. Yeah, so that is a bit of a taste of the world of Niddah, the menstrual laws. And also, might be, a bit of a bummer to be separate for 13 days, but the renewal, the rabbis talk about this refreshing and this renewal at the end of the 13, 15 days, that the marital relationship is more exciting than it would have. Divorce today in North America is well over 70%. And a major factor for that number is because the couple is too familiar with one another. They get bored after 5, 6, 10 years. They get bored. In Judaism, boredom is not one of the reasons of divorce. Our divorce rates are lower for many reasons, thankfully. But one of the causes of divorce in the Jewish community is not boredom in the marital relationship, because we have the laws of Niddah.
It's like having almost a wedding night all over again every couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's like another wedding night.
Yeah.
So it might appear to be restrictive, but ultimately it makes for a much more meaningful and spiritual marital life. That's something to keep in mind.
It's true about a lot of things in Judaism. The restrictions on Shabbat, for example, very restrictive. But on the other hand, there's so much benefit that we get from not doing certain things. We appreciate not having to do them. And when we can do them, we appreciate them more. And just taking a break from things, just not being able to do anything that you want whenever you want. It's a discipline, but it really enhances your life.
Absolutely.
So we see that in all aspects of Judaism.
One of the things I say very often in my public lectures is that some things in Judaism suck. Fasting, sucks. Some of the restrictions throughout the calendar year, nothing in particular. You could say it sucks, it bothers me. But one thing about Judaism, it's a meaningful life. With all the things that seem to be bad, that seem to be restrictive, but ultimately with all the positives and all the mitzvahs and the celebrations and the life cycles and the Shabbats and the holidays and the meaning, it's a much more meaningful life than any lifestyle that you could name from any religion, 100%. Any culture, 100%. So it's a package. Judaism is a package, and not everything is, cloud nine in Judaism. We have some things that, are a bit of a...
But even those things, fasting personally doesn't bother me so much. But those things, you have to look for the good, even when it's unpleasant. You say, like, why am I doing this? There's a higher purpose. Am I connecting to God in the way he wants me to when I'm not eating because it's less of a distraction? Or if I'm mourning, am I focusing on that? We could say, well, these things are unpleasant, but God isn't looking to punish us. He's looking to enhance our life. So we can try to overlook the difficulties and realize why is God making us do this? There is a positive reason for it.
And furthermore, some of the restrictions help us grow. as people, as Jews, as husbands, as fathers. So Judaism is a package. And some of it, like the Niddah laws, seem to be not so exciting. But ultimately, it makes for a very, very inspiring and meaningful life. Another aspect of intimacy in Judaism we have today with digital technology and social media, so many distractions, so many unrealistic portrayals of what the intimate relationship is supposed to be. And we have to remember that it's Hollywood. That is the digital age. That's the social media. It's not real. So social media gives us all kinds of images and ideas of what the marital relationship is supposed to look like and how intimacy is supposed to look like. That's not Judaism. We believe in modesty. We believe in doing things on a higher level. Contrary to popular misconception, the intimacy in Judaism is not through a hole in the sheet. And there are really no restrictions.
Where did that come from anyway?
I'll tell you where that came from. It's funny you ask that question. I'll tell you where it came from.
This is going to be a headline because people, everyone's
it's
heard
a headline. Do they do it through a hole in the sheet? And where does that come from? I'll tell you where it came from. It's funny, but it's so obvious. Once upon a time, 50 years ago, somebody was walking through Brooklyn and saw the tallis cotton, the tzitzis, hanging to dry on the clothesline. And the tallis cotton, the undergarment with the strings, is a poncho-looking garment with a big hole in the middle. The non-Jews who saw this believed, Orthodox Jews, a shida, they thought that was the hole in the sheet.
Is that true? You made that?
Yeah. No, I didn't make it up.
That's true.
That's a given reason, a given explanation for this misconception that Jews do it through a hole in the sheet. Yes, that's the real explanation that's given. Right. But
revealed in this podcast.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Remember the moral edge.
I never heard that.
Yeah, that's the given reason. That's the official. I don't make this stuff up. I just share it with our viewers. But intimacy in Judaism is real. No, you're not allowed to have a hole in the sheet. You have to be fully unclothed when you're intimate. You have to enjoy it. And every couple enjoys it in different ways than another couple. But the digital media, social media, with the pictures, with the videos are showing us, that's fake. That's not real. That's not love. That's not marriage. That's not continuity. That's not a future with a partner. We have the answers, not the digital social media, not the Facebook, not the Reels, not the... We have the answer. And it's in our holy books. And it's also passed from rabbi to students, how to enjoy a proper marital relationship. And it's much better than the garbage that people see on the Reels and the videos and the internet. It's not like that. It's not meant to be like that. And it's better the way we have it.
Do you give classes on that?
Yeah,
you
frequently,
do.
Yeah. One of my expertise, I have a special certification in teaching the laws of Niddah, family purity. So I do that quite often. Yeah. So we have to remember that even in the world of distractions, Judaism is where it's at. Okay, Amen. That's my piece on intimacy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue now with idolatry in Judaism. Idolatry is probably, or maybe it's tied for the top 3, but the worst transgression a Jew can commit.
It's one of the big 3, right?
It's the big 3. We have 3 cardinal sins that a person, for the most part, is said to give up his life rather than transgress. There are some exceptions, but it's a general attitude. Give up your life rather than transgress. Idolatry, adultery, and murder. And we're going to talk about idolatry right now. As we just heard, it's one of the top 3. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no, that's God speaking.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Exodus chapter 20.
That would be idolatry if you want to call yourself the Lord.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have these false prophets throughout history who've called themselves God and godly and powerful and that kind of thing. But the source comes from the Torah. Those 10 commandments, they're not 10 suggestions. They're 10 commandments. And one of those commandments are, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. And you shall not make for yourself a graven image. It all begins there. Actually, it begins even earlier, but that's the revelation at Sinai, Exodus chapter 20. We call this avodah zarah, foreign worship. Trying to replace God in any way, shape, or form is unacceptable, intolerable. There's zero tolerance in Judaism for anything besides pure monotheism. Nothing else. In the ancient world, they would worship wood and stone. We'll talk about soon the modern idolatry is wealth and power. We'll talk about that. But, you ask somebody, what's the most important thing of Judaism? About being Jew, what's the most important thing you can say about Judaism? Some people answer keeping the Sabbath.
Well, it's a famous question. They asked Rabbi Akiva that question.
Very good. That's a good different direction. One's going on that direction. But yeah, to the question, if you ask a Jew or non-Jew, a secular Jew or non-Jew, what's the most important thing at the top of Judaism? Some will say, don't eat bread on Passover. You keep the Sabbath. You have to fast on Yom Kippur. No, those are all important. But that's not the top, the primary, the most important thing in Judaism. The most important thing in Judaism is the belief in one God, creator of heaven and earth, who created the world in 6 days, rested on the seventh, also known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is the most sacred, non-negotiable, holiest aspect of all Judaism. And anything that dilutes what I just said is unacceptable. Certainly for a Jew, it's unacceptable. We can get into the question, is Christianity monotheistic or is idolatrous? Good question. You ready to tackle that one now? You ready?
I thought you were going to wait for the end for that one. But okay, whatever you want.
Well, we can cut and paste and tape and that. Okay.
Well, what is idolatry? Why don't you define idolatry?
Okay, first of all, let's start with I think we should go to the origins of monotheism. Okay. Because our forefather Abraham, the first Jew, grew up idolatrous. There were no Jews. There was no monotheism back then. Abraham was the first human being to teach the world monotheism.
But what about Adam? I mean, he spoke to God. He knew there was one God.
That's true.
He didn't worship idols.
Very good. Somewhere along the line, that creed, that belief got lost and buried. And the world became pretty much pagan idolatrous.
Well, what about Noah? He also believed
in one God. He saw the one God, spoke to the one God.
So how many years was it from Noah to Abraham? Like 1,000 years?
No, it was years, I don't know, 10 generations, if I'm not mistaken. It was 10 generations.
Okay. Well, people lived a long time. But whatever, I think it was around 1,000 years. I could be wrong. But something
along those 10 generations, something got messed up and the belief in one God got lost somehow. That's why you got to teach your children. Teach your children Torah so it doesn't get lost. That's what we have in the Shema twice a day. V'shinantam levanecha. You have to teach our children. We have to teach our children the Torah so it doesn't get lost, like the belief in the one God got lost until Abraham brought it back again.
So before Abraham, everybody believed in idol. Everyone I don't know what they believed in, but they worshipped idols.
Yeah.
Nobody believed that there was one God that created the world. It's amazing.
It seems that in Abraham's time that was the case, as you correctly noted. In Noah's time, in Adam's time, they did know the one God. Somewhere between Noah and Abraham, it got lost. Got lost. And Abraham brought it back. So we have a beautiful medrash. I want to share with viewers the medrash. Abraham was raised in a society of idolatry. Idol worship, paganism was the way of life. But Abraham realized, through thinking, through observation, it's not possible that there's multiple gods running the show. It's not possible these statues and icons and images have any power. So the medrash tells us that one day Abraham went to his father's idol shop. Yes, Abraham's father, Terach, he sold idols. So he made a living. If people come into the store and say, Terach, I'd like an idol to worship the sun, an idol to worship that, an idol for this problem, an idol for that blessing. So one day Abraham realized it's not possible. These statues are gods. It's not possible. So Abraham had an idea. He took a hammer and he smashed all the idols in his father's china shop. All the idols except the biggest one, and put the hammer in the hand of the idol. Terach's father comes back after lunch, says, Abraham, this place is a mess. All my idols have been broken to smithereens. What's going on over here? He says, Dad, listen, that idol over there, that big strong one, he went and smashed all the idols. Terach says, what? It's not possible. The idols don't move. They have no power. They can't do this stuff. So Abraham says, Father, if the idol doesn't have the power to even smash his enemy, what are you worshiping over here? What are you wasting your time with this wood and stone? And with that, Abraham proved to the world that his belief was with God. He had to run for his life, literally, because not only did his father want to kill him for ruining the store, but the neighborhood found out that he's no longer worshiping idols. Abraham had to run for his life. So he went into hiding, and a few other midrashim on what happened to Abraham after he confessed his belief in the one God, what he went through, and caused all kinds of challenges.
How did people actually believe that these stones had power? Like, that's the hard thing to understand.
So the commentators talk about that. Do they believe the stones had power, or was it an intermediary representation of different ideas? We're going to get into this. Maybe we'll get into it right now, but
The crux of the crux of idolatry, the way I understand it, is that there's not one power. It's not so much about a stone, a tree. There are powers. There's a power of good, a power of bad. There's the sun, there's the moon. All these powers that are independent. It's not one unified, all-powerful being. It's multiple beings that each have different dimensions and powers to them and compete against each other. I think that's the crux of idolatry. One God negates any possibility that there could be multiple aspects of the one God, but not multiple independent powers.
Yes.
Is that about right?
You've described Hinduism to a great extent.
Okay. See that? All right.
Yeah, that's what Hinduism is. But also, let me make something very clear.
I stayed in Thailand too long. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you notice that in Thailand?
Buddhism.
Yeah,
Buddhism is there.
Right.
And by the way, there's different shades of Buddhism, by the way. We're talking about other religions. There is Buddhism that prays to the Buddha, and there is Buddhism that's just a philosophy, okay, which is less bad to be a Buddhist in terms of the way you want to think and not worship. But even the religions that worship one God, like the Sikhs, if I'm not mistaken, they worship one God. They're not monotheistic according to our interpretation.
How is that?
They don't worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's a different God.
Which God? I mean, there is no other. I mean,
they'll tell you there's another God. There are several religions. Sikh is one of them. Even to some extent, the Hinduism, there is a branch, a stream of Hinduism that will claim they believe in one God, even though there's a million different gods. But it's really one God. It's all a path to one God. But that one God in these other religions is not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and hence the religion is invalid. We believe, cut to the chase, any religion that doesn't believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is a bad religion, is an invalid religion. And any religion that believes in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for non-Jews at least, is a valid religion.
So what is that, Islam and Christianity?
Pretty much. I think all we have is
Let's talk about
Christianity.
Islam first.
Okay. So Islam is probably more monotheistic than Christianity. The vast majority of our sages, of our rabbis, tell us that it's permitted to go into a mosque, for example, because Islam is accepted as being a monotheistic religion. They believe in the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As I mentioned, that's what we need. The whole world has to believe in our God. You don't have to be Jewish. We don't want you to be Jewish. You must believe in our God. Otherwise, your religion is invalid. It's illegitimate. Islam believes in our God, and therefore, from a theological perspective, it is a legitimate religion at its core. Muhammad is a prophet, a messenger, not a god, according to most interpretations of Islam. And therefore, Judaism has no theological problem with the belief of Islam. Okay, but Christianity,
except that they reject the Torah. Don't they rewrite kind of history?
We don't need the non-Jewish world to accept our Torah. Mm-hmm. First of all, the Quran does mention the Torah many times and does acknowledge that God gave a revelation at Mount Sinai called the Torah. They just believe it's been replaced with the Quran, which for a Jew, we don't care. As long as you believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you're a good person following the famous 7 laws of Noah, you're going to heaven. That's all you need. So we don't care. They say the Torah is real, not real, a myth. Doesn't bother us. We're just happy they believe in one God, our God, and the 7 mitzvahs of Noah. Christianity, on the other hand, is much more problematic because Christianity believes in a trinity, in a 3-part God, or the Father God is you have to access to him and intermediaries to him. We don't like that, okay? For a non-Jew, it's probably permitted. It's probably not a sinful religion for non-Jews to be Christians because ultimately it gets them to the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we reject the idea that you need an intermediary. The let's talk the Catholic side of Christianity right now. Very problematic, very problematic. Why? First of all, there's idols everywhere. And I mentioned the verse a moment ago, you shall have no graven images.
Well, they don't worship the idols.
They worship the images of Mary and Jesus. No, the Catholics.
The idols?
We're talking about the Catholics.
They're just representative. I don't know. I'm saying, but I don't think they worship they don't believe the stone is anything. It's just a representation.
Well, they believe that Jesus and or Mary and or all the saints throughout history have independent powers. Catholics do pray to individual saints. Saint Nicholas, Saint Jerome, Saint this one. There are streams of Catholicism in the Eastern Orthodox.
They pray to them?
They pray to them that these saints should answer their prayers. It goes without saying that they pray alone to Jesus, that Jesus should answer their prayers. So this is very problematic. Again, we're not against the Catholic religion. Ultimately, they believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we're happy with that. But their method of worshiping the God is unacceptable from a Jewish perspective, certainly for a Jew.
Do they believe that Jesus is on par with God, like he has independent power?
The Catholics believe that. The Protestants less so, or there's mixed views in the Protestant world. The Catholic world this is primary, that Jesus is a standalone power. In fact, he is himself God in the form of man.
And who's the third? The Holy Ghost. What is that? What's that about?
I'm a rabbi.
I don't know. Well,
I don't
run the Trinity. I don't know.
I don't run the Jesuit college over here, Michael. I don't. The Holy Spirit is is something between God and Jesus, to my knowledge. But I'm not an expert on the Trinity.
You weren't prepared enough.
I wasn't prepared enough for the Holy Spirit. You got me. Jesus and Mary I have down pat, but the Holy Spirit I didn't research well. But these ideas are unacceptable.
So can a Jew walk into a church?
So a Jew. Certainly a Catholic church, a Jew is forbidden to walk into a Catholic church because from a Jewish perspective, or at least for a Jew, the Catholic religion is idolatrous. If not literally idolatrous, it smells of idolatry. Those pictures everywhere. The praying to Jesus, the praying to Mary, smells like idolatry. I mean, the Catholics might have an answer to say that they're monotheistic, but I have a hard time understanding how you can be monotheistic when you say, you can pray to God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or you can pray to Jesus. Doesn't work that way. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Fundamental Judaism. Mm-hmm. So Catholicism, from a Jewish perspective, is an idolatrous religion. I don't mean that in a negative way. It's not meant to have any animosity towards Catholic practitioners. We're very happy that Catholic people they're good Catholic people, and they love Israel, and they love Jews, and they good people. Some do, some don't. And
but you're talking more in the technical sense.
Yeah, the technical. So as long as a Catholic believes in the God of Israel ultimately and is a good person, okay, you worship this God or that God or the Jesus, the Mary, the pictures. We don't like it. But okay, live and let live. In the Protestant world, there's a lot more nuances. And you mentioned you're allowed to go into a church. Well, as a general rule, the answer remains no. But there are Christian denominations where you won't even see a cross in the church. And there are Christian denominations where they acknowledge that Jesus is a prophet, not a godly force. So if I had to vote or go to a town hall meeting in such a church, I would consider going. Probably would. I have to go to a town hall meeting in the Catholic Church, I wouldn't go.
You would go into the sanctuary or just into like a meeting hall?
That's a very good question. If it was something that was very distinctly secular and it's really communal, it might be a citywide, like I said, a town hall meeting, and it was in the sanctuary, and a sanctuary doesn't have a cross, it might be permissible. It's what to talk about.
If it has a cross, it's not permissible?
It's less permissible. It's a big problem because we believe that the cross is one of those forbidden images that I mentioned from the 10 Commandments. We're not allowed to have images.
Well, you're not having it. You're just sitting in a room. It's not that you're not connected to the cross.
It represents what might be idolatry. And so the Jew cannot be in the area of idolatry. We have zero tolerance for idolatry. Zero. Other things, all transgressions of Torah, we should have zero tolerance. But idolatry is a zero of the zero. It's zero tolerance. Whereas, person has to break the kosher rules. They got to be lenient. They're traveling, an emergency. So we bend the kosher rules sometimes. We bend the Shabbat rules sometimes. Someone is sick, emergency situations. We bend rules. Idolatry, we don't bend. Zero tolerance for idolatry. So that's where Christianity is. Christianity is a bit of a gray area. Like I said, the Catholic stream is very problematic from idolatrous perspective. Protestant, less so. Depends on the denomination. But Islam, as we said, is purely monotheistic, and Jews allowed to enter a mosque, whether it's a tourist or even to pray.
Have you ever been in a mosque?
Oh, many times.
Yeah, you have.
Many times. When I travel, on my travels, I go to the famous mosques.
Catch a mincha if you're running late, just get the afternoon prayer.
Talking about this idea that Christianity talks about an intermediary for God. Some streams of Christianity say that Jesus is not a God, but you need Jesus to get to God. As a verse says in their Bible, there's no way to the Father other than through me, says Jesus. Intermediaries. So I want to demonstrate how even that has zero room in Judaism. The sin of the golden calf was not that they believed the golden calf was God. The golden calf created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. That the golden calf took them out of Egypt. No. They wanted an intermediary. And we know the golden calf fiasco, the sin of the golden calf, that's like the embarrassing disaster of the book of Exodus. It wasn't pure idolatry. It was a sin of intermediaryism, if I can make up a word. And that gives you an idea how important monotheism is. We go right to God, straight up, local call, no intermediary, no operators along the way, straight ahead. And that, again, the golden calf emphasizes how even an intermediary has no place in Judaism.
So what is an intermediary? I mean, it basically means that we have to connect to something lower that connects to God who's higher. We don't have the direct connection to God.
That's what Christianity believes. Many streams of Christianity, yeah.
Really, because that's interesting. But we do have things like, say, we go pray at the kotel, right, the wall. A lot of times people are like almost thinking that touching it in a way like it's physical, almost like it's a god. I mean, it's not. We're not praying to the wall.
Yeah.
But there is that. I could understand. Obviously, it's not justified in Judaism.
I'll give you a great example of what you're referring to. I'll give you a great example. In Judaism, we believe in going to pray at the burial sites of holy people. That's another example. So it's a big thing in Judaism to go to a holy, we call it tzaddik, a very righteous person who died, and we pray there. But you got to be very careful that we're not praying to the deceased. We're praying to God in the merit of the deceased.
That's a fine line. A lot of people, you really have to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to connect to this righteous person who's buried there, and it's very easy to fall into the trap that you're actually asking
the deceased,
this person to
act on your behalf. Yeah. So we want to pray to God in the merit of who's buried here, not to have who's buried here to be our God. So that's an important point. Pure monotheism. Now, today you're going to ask maybe, there's no golden calves. No one's worshiping the stones and idols anymore, but we still have idolatry. We have wealth and power, and these things are the modern day idolatry.
And self. You could turn yourself into a god.
Yeah, too much ego is not good, very dangerous. Power becomes idolatry when authority is pursued without any moral restraint or considerations. Fame becomes an idol when public approval overweighs ethical considerations. Money becomes an idol when financial success becomes your sole pursuit. This is a form of idolatry. This is not the way God wanted us to live. It's not the way God runs the world. The dollar says, in God we trust. Remember, it's in God, not the dollar, that we trust. So you got to be very careful for modern day idolatry to keep focused, keep everything into perspective. The golden medium, as Maimonides would say, you need to run after money. You need to run after success. You need to run after power sometimes, but with ethical constraints and with Torah values and with a good heart and a belief in God. And that's the way we're going to be successful.
Sounds like a winning formula.
Okay, we're going to continue now with a fun topic. Intoxication in Judaism. Don't show the viewers what we're doing behind the scenes. Michael, come on, keep something secret. Intoxication in Judaism. Unlike religions that prohibit alcohol entirely, Judaism embraces literally. Embraces wine and alcohol, whether it's through the Shabbat Kiddush, the festivals, under the wedding chuppah, we have a bottle of wine we're drinking. We believe that everything can be uplifted and sanctified, as I mentioned in previous episodes. Alcohol's one of those things as well. This Torah cautions self-control. The sages caution self-control. And we do see alcohol being the source of disaster right from the beginning pages of the Bible. In the Torah, Noah, what was his transgression? After the flood, what did he run for? The bottle. That was Noah's downfall. Everything was hunky-dory. Everything was great with Noah until after the flood. He got off the boat, ran for the bottle. Not the attitude, not the approach. The bottle has to be a complement to a greater picture, not the picture. And that was Noah's fault. In fact, some say that the sin of the Garden of Eden, the forbidden fruit, was alcohol, was grapes that was turned into wine. So that's one opinion, that we don't know what the forbidden fruit of the Garden of Eden was, even though these Christian paintings have the apple.
Right. I don't think that's the Talmud. That's not even an option.
Correct.
It's wheat or it's...
We have 7 interpretations what the forbidden fruit was, and apple isn't one of them. One of them is grapes was turned into wine. So you got to be careful. Right from the beginning pages of the Torah, we see that wine, alcohol could be dangerous, but it could also be a blessing. It could also sanctify, enhance, uplift any occasion, any event. As the Talmud tells us, Ein simcha ela b'basar v'yayin. Wine is one of the things that make people happy. And in Judaism, we want people happy. We believe in happiness. We want you to be happy. And the Hebrew word for yayin, interestingly, wine is yayin in Hebrew, has the numerical value, the gematria of the word sod, secret. It's a bit of a play on words that when we drink, we reveal our inner self, our inner secrets, which could be a good thing, to let loose and be yourself. When wine enters, as they say, the secrets emerge. But it's a sign of holiness. You can't have a Passover Seder without alcohol. You can't have a wedding celebration without alcohol. You can't have a Shabbat dinner every week without alcohol. We take it and we sanctify it.
There are three things that define a person, right? Kiso, kaso, and koso.
Very good.
Right?
A person, how frugality.
In Hebrew, the words sound almost identical. Kiso, your pocket, how you deal with money.
Right.
Kaso, your anger level. And koso, your cup.
Yeah.
How you react after you drink.
Exactly. Some people become holier people after they drink, and some people become pigs after they drink.
Should we do an experiment here? Oh, we'll do it. Okay. Not on camera. Okay,
not on camera. Okay, I got to drive home.
Yeah.
You know, another example in the Bible where we see that alcohol led to disaster was the story of Nadav and Avihu. Aaron's sons were killed suddenly. We don't know why exactly they were killed. There's several interpretations. One of those interpretations, they went to do the service in the temple drunk. So again, everything in moderation, everything at the right time. You don't drink and go pray. In fact, even today, it's forbidden to drink and pray.
And you can't be a witness, right? At a wedding, sometimes you go to a wedding, you can't. If
you can't serve as a witness in ritual matters if you're drunk.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So very true. So Solomon talks about intoxication, impairing judgment, impairing self-control. Gotta be careful of that. Book of Proverbs talks about alcohol and wine leading us astray. Everything in moderation. And the Talmud talks about different levels of intoxication. Just having a drink, great. Someone who's under the influence, someone who's drunk, and someone who is plastered. We generally have 4 levels of drunkenness in Jewish law. And someone who's plastered, obviously, someone who's drunk cannot even pray. You got to be careful. You have the holiday of Purim. In Purim, it's a mitzvah to get drunk. Now, how drunk is subject to dispute. But Purim, the holiday that falls out around March, we celebrate the story in the book of Esther. We have an obligation to enjoy alcohol. But you got to be careful, because you drink too much alcohol, you won't be able to pray the evening service when Purim ends. So everything in moderation, we have to be careful. Human dignity is very important. Excessive intoxication changes a person's behavior. They make a mockery of themselves. That's forbidden. What's another example? Public drunkenness, offensive language, violence, reckless behavior, damaging other people's property while you're drunk. These are things we have to avoid and be careful with. Thankfully, for the most part, alcoholism is not a big problem in the Jewish community. It exists, make no mistake, but it's not a major concern. But we have an obligation. When we see somebody who is under the influence, they have a problem with alcohol, we have to help them. We have to try and help them get treatment and recovery, because it's not good. And it's our job to help anyone when they're going through challenges. And now our topic, intoxication, that could be a challenge for some people. So a Jew has an obligation to seek help for others.
In general, Jews are not drinkers as much as the non-Jewish world. Would you say? Well,
it's funny you mention that. Stereotypically, that's what they say.
Jews eat, right? We eat.
We
eat food. We don't
and the
drink.
non-Jews drink. That's just, Jackie Mason has a great skit on the Jews eating and the Gentiles drinking.
Yeah.
But truth be told, you look at the Jewish
changing
week.
A little
it's
bit.
changing. Jews drink. Orthodox Jews,
Kiddush clubs, and
especially Orthodox Jews, especially on Shabbat, and especially on Shabbat morning. Mm-hmm. So alcohol does have a central role, and so we've got to be even extra careful. It's a responsibility to enjoy alcohol. That says on the bottle.
I've seen you with a cup or two.
Maybe, but we won't reveal everything. Okay. But obviously, never drink and drive. Never drink and pray. Okay, you got to be very careful.
Well, what are you supposed to do if it's time to pray? You should miss the prayer.
So if a person is overly drunk, they don't pray. We pray 3 times a day.
Then you would double up on the next prayer.
Correct. You'll have to double up at the next prayer. But a person should pace himself to know, the deadline for the afternoon service is arriving. I can't have that drink now. Let me first pray, and then I'll have a drink. Alcohol is subjective. Some people are under the influence after a small amount, and other people need a large amount to be, intoxicated. And it's subjective. If a person drinks a certain amount, we won't even put a measurement, but a certain amount, and he feels he's fine to pray, he's allowed to pray. He's allowed to give a class. Person feels he went overboard. Be mature, be responsible, be honest with yourself, and don't pray, and don't drive, and don't do things you shouldn't do under the influence of alcohol.
Would you say, sometimes when a person drinks, they're feeling in a a mood where they can be more spiritual. I mean, we have that obviously on Purim, but Purim is also a physical time.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to, they say that the holiest day of the year in a way is Purim, because if you can handle the alcohol and still get yourself close to God, that's even more challenging than if you're not like on Yom Kippur, which we say Yom Kippur is only Kippurim. It's only like Purim. Purim, you really have an opportunity to get closer to God, even more so than Yom Kippur, when we're abstaining from food and drink and everything.
Yeah.
So, alcohol, if used properly, can be a way that can, a method to connect to God, as long as it's not abused, and as long as it's not overdone, it can get you start thinking in more spiritual ways and open you up, just like it opens you up to people. It can open you up to spirituality too. But you have to know yourself. Obviously, there's a limit. But like you said, everything that's created can be used for the good and for the bad. If you can find a way to use alcohol for the good,
sanctify your Shabbat, sanctify even a gathering, a Torah gathering. A birthday party.
A bris, right? When a child is circumcised, there's wine. Yeah. At a wedding, there's wine, right? Inaugurating the Sabbath, there's wine. We find wine in all these interesting places. Yeah. There's a reason for that. Why didn't God say no alcohol? Alcohol, that's a secular activity. Right. When it comes to the holiness of Judaism, stay away from it. No, it's specifically in the most holy acts. That's where we bring the wine in. So God is kind of testing us and saying, can you use this tool to make yourself holy? And that's a challenge. Yeah. So,
and indeed, we believe that everything in the mundane world, in the secular world, and the material world can be sanctified and made holy.
The 4 cups of wine, we're experiencing the Seder, such a holy night of freedom and closeness to God, and we got to drink 4 cups of wine. Yeah. A lot of people can handle it. My kids, whatever, right. They mix with grape juice, whatever. There's ways out of it. But I say, no, listen, wine is still better. Come on, you can handle the wine. God wants you to have this freedom experience. You got to loosen up. You're not slaves anymore. You're free. Enjoy it in a holy way, but enjoy it. So God really knows what He's doing. He's telling us to use what He's given for positive reasons.
I fully agree.
So
well said.
Do you as a rabbi have challenges with people that come to you and say, I have a problem. I like to drink. I like to feel that it makes me holy, but it's really, I can't control myself. Did they come to you for advice?
No, I haven't gone alcoholic addiction.
Okay, so you're not an AA officer. No. But you've been to classes. Joking.
Yeah. No, it's after we spent time in jail together, I got over it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we invite you to the Kiddush Club every week.
Every Saturday morning after the service.
After the service, right? Yeah. We don't cheat. I hate those Kiddush clubs when they walk out in the middle of the prayer and they come back drunk.
The American Kiddush Club. I can go off on a rant on that one, Michael. I can go off on that one.
There's also the Toamea, the Friday. Now it's a Friday thing, right?
And that's
you got to get drunk before Shabbat.
That's exploded. The Friday afternoon.
I know it's a big thing with the kids, whatever. I don't know.
I know.
I'm a traditionalist. Friday night at the meal, at a Kiddush. That's but.
Agreed.
The before and and you don't walk out of shul and then walk.
I agree.
All right. Okay.
That was fun.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, let's just wish our listeners here l'chaim.
L'chaim,
everybody.
Viewers.
Once the camera's off, we'll partake.
Maybe.
We got to get we're not going to get him on camera drinking. Right. Not yet, anyway. But anyway, it was fantastic.
Yeah,
as
thank
always.
You. It was a fun one. That was a fun one. Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.